The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. First and 12. A total roundup of BYU and Utah football and the expanded Big 12 Conference. Brought to you by Macy's Grocery Stores. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
Hour number one continues to roll on here on First and 12 on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone and podcast. If you're listening on demand, we appreciate you taking the time to download the show, subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and leave that 5-star rating and review. It helps us out. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry with you, and we talked about the BYU offense in the win, the 41-13 victory over Southern Illinois. Let's get to the defense, Alex, and you know, it was a group that last year, their flaws kind of got masked because of how bad the offense was last season. But BYU's defense struggled a lot last year. And then with the adversity off the field with Jay Hill, you kind of went into this game thinking, what can you reasonably expect from this group? And how did you feel like BYU's defense showed in their first game of the season?
Yeah, really well. I mean, you know, at some point, and I don't want to be the guy who nitpicks the refs in game one, but there was a weird moment for this Big 12 crew where they didn't review at all an obvious missed call, which was that drop on on pretty much it must have been the biggest play. No, it was probably the long touchdown run by Williams was the big one, I think that. But in terms of yardage, I mean, BYU gave up just over 200 yards of total offense. That's an awesome night for BYU's defense. And 48 of it should have come back because the referees did not see Kalani calling timeout. SIU knew that they probably had a play that was left on the table there, or that they got a freebie, and so they snapped that ball quickly down at the other end of the field. And so maybe you don't even get a score on that drive if that 48-yarder doesn't get held up. And so, again, nitpicking, but what's interesting about all this and what we found out in the postgame too is that Jay Hill was still planning this thing meticulously from his hospital bed, right? Isn't that what we heard? I mean,
Kalani
said, "Hey," I mean, he's just going out there and he's typing it all. It's like, "Hey, go in, get a heart procedure, and then detail out how you want Kalani to call this game." Who, by the way, I mean, if you're going to have somebody do it, that's what, you know, a guy who knows the defense very, very well is Kalani Sitake. But again, there's another wrinkle in a week of preparation for this BYU team, and so. Add that on top. But the defense, I think, showed out well. 2 sacks, 5 TFLs on top of that, so 7 TFLs with the sacks included. I thought it was really good pressure. And, Mitch, they're already a fifth of the way there of their total of sacks from last season. That's a good start.
It is. I will say, if I'm going to be a little nitpicky, that against an FCS team that was not a good offense, you'd like seeing a few more sacks, but still, there were playmakers there. And, you know, what's impressive is that the preseason All Big 12 pick, Tyler Batty, really didn't have many snaps. We'll have to monitor that. I mean, he had 0 tackles, only 1 quarterback hurry in the win. A bunch of players got snaps in this game, including a bunch of young guys for BYU. In total, there was about 24 players recorded at least 1 tackle or more, led by Jack Kelly, who looked as good as advertised. 5 tackles, 0.5 tackles for loss and a quarterback hurry. Kelly, his combination of size and speed, kind of seeing him go full speed for the first time, really. I mean, we've seen him in spring and fall camp, but unleashing him, if you will, I thought he was very impressive, and he's going to be maybe the star of this defense. He might be one of the best players on this team. He is a impact player for BYU. And this was a night, too, where BYU was shorthanded in some spots. They didn't have Maury Bamba at cornerback. He was in a boot. They had a backup defensive tackle, and David Latu, he's dealing with a knee, his right knee. So, BYU's a little bit shorthanded, and still pretty good depth was on display, and BYU cruised to an easy win. And I think what's noteworthy, too, is that this was never in doubt. When Southern Illinois got it, it looked like it was going to be 14-6 at the half. BYU's defense in that moment, you thought, oh no, Southern Illinois is going to make a comeback or make this interesting. BYU just settled in and took care of business. And I thought it was a very solid effort for a week one where there are so many unknowns in these season openers?
I want to say, so John Nelson had a sack. What was the other sack? Who was the other sack attributed to? Or did they spread around a couple half sacks, or how did this one work out?
Isaiah Banya, he was the first one.
That's right. And so, but again, I thought you saw some good pressure across the board. Tyler Batty, I know everybody's waiting for that 3-sack game for him to show up this year, but I mean, for sure, he draws a lot of attention, and I think it helps out the rest of the defense. But again, we saw pressure that we didn't see from this BYU defense very often. I thought it was a really, really good first showing from them. They had a couple of long runs that were, frankly, just DJ Williams kind of freelancing because plays had been blown up. And so on the overall, you saw a clean game from BYU on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball. I think 3 penalties total on the night for 15 yards. And so it was a very disciplined outing as well for BYU, on top of this one being not a lot of yards. I mean, and the other thing, Mitch, was I think that they doubled up SIU in the time of possession. I know you look at that, a lot of that it comes down to the offense, but the reality is that your defense gives you the opportunity. They took away so many opportunities from SIU. They forced a lot of punts. They sniffed out a fake punt as well. Was that Tanner Wall who ended up getting that tackle on that one too? So, a lot of guys showing up. They have depth at that defensive back position, and then you get like a classic pick from Jacob Robinson, who started off his season well. So this defense looks really, really sharp. I know it's the first game. I know it's an FCS opponent, but a lot of things to be able to take away from there. But also, if you're a coach, you're going, oh, yeah, we can nitpick some stuff too. And so there's stuff for this team to work on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. And so nice outing for this BYU defense in week one here.
It definitely was. And we got to get to a break. We'll get to the Big 12 Sound Roundup, a weekly fixture here on 1st and 12, where you get the best sound bites from the coaches and players around the Big 12 Conference. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry with you here on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.